back to a brand new episode of Virtual Coffee. My name is Alexa Collier, and on this podcast, I chat with small business owners where we discuss their perspectives, advice, their stories of how they opened up their businesses. And sometimes I do solo episodes where I share what's been on my mind recently. Now, on this episode, I have with me the founders and owners of Heritage Donuts, Josh and Jennifer. They opened up their donut shop here in the Wake Forest, North Carolina area. They opened it up recently, and their donuts are delicious. I, in fact, know by firsthand because my husband and I have gone to their shop and tried their donuts, and they, like I said, are quite delicious. On this episode, they share their journey to opening several small businesses and how they work best together as a married couple. So definitely a fascinating and unique episode. Their story is quite unique, so stay tuned for that. But before we hear from them, as always, I'd appreciate if you could rate and review Virtual Coffee on the Apple Podcast app and on Spotify. It helps others find us and find the small businesses that we feature. You can also find us on social media, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, all the social medias. It's all at Virtual Coffee Podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. I know you'll enjoy this episode. So sit back, sip on your coffee, and let's hear from Josh and Jennifer. Welcome, Josh and Jennifer. Thank you so much for being on Virtual Coffee today.
Thank you for having us. We're glad to be here.
Let's get into it. So introduce yourselves to our audience and a little bit about your business. Just give us a sprinkle, if you will.
My name's Josh Goodman. I'm the owner. My wife is Jennifer. She's the boss lady. We started Heritage Donuts, began starting it about 2 years ago. It took us a while to build it out. It's actually our second donut shop that we've had. We had our first one back in 2014 is when we started that one. But yeah, we're just excited to be here, excited to be doing what we're doing. We took a little break from the small business life, but it called us back. So we're just glad to be back into it, honestly.
Is your first donut shop still operating, or was it in a different location?
So it was in southern Mississippi,
Okay.
ways away. It is still operating, just under new ownership.
Oh, wow. Wow. That's awesome. I didn't know that. How'd you guys get into donuts? I'm sure you perhaps get that question quite often, but why donuts?
Yeah. So donuts, I learned from Jennifer's family. So her family actually has some donut shops in the Carolinas. I think now they have about 7, 8, or 9, I think, total.
Oh, wow.
So they're not like franchised. They're all mom and pop shop style donut shops. So essentially, I learned from them. I learned from a couple of their aunts and uncles in particular, the 2 donut shops in Burlington and Mebane called NC Jelly Donuts. Very popular in that area. And my wife, she's got an entrepreneurial spirit, as I like to say. So when we first got together and started dating, she would tell me about her family's, back then they were restaurants, but then her family started doing donut shops when they learned how to do donuts. Okay. And I wanted to help her kind of achieve her dreams, because that was what she always wanted to do, was get into entrepreneurship like her family.
That's neat. So it kind of really runs in the family. That's awesome. That'd be cool if donuts ran in my family. Did you guys go to college or like graduate with a different degree? Mainly asking, was it always, hey, we want to run our own businesses? Do you guys currently have other jobs? Just curious what that looks like.
So I actually went to school for at UNCG for media studies. I was into broadcast journalism and had originally planned on, working at a news station, like a sports radio station, that type of thing. Really, small business ownership had never crossed my mind. Jennifer went to the School of Hard Knock Life. Right. And she didn't go to college or anything. She's just always been involved in her family's businesses, whether they were her aunts or uncles or her dad and her mom's. It was actually back in 2014 when we opened that first donut shop. It was kind of where the rubber meets the road for me. I had a job opportunity to move away and potentially get into working for a news station, or her and I could move away together and go open a business. So we decided to take that leap together, and the rest is history.
That's a really neat story. And Jennifer, for you, was it an easy decision, hard decision to, not go to school? Was it just because, you had that in your family? And the reason I'm asking is for folks who might be listening who might be struggling with that question currently. I have an idea. Do I go and get the 4-year degree? Do I pursue my idea? Any advice there based on your own experience?
So for me, it wasn't hard because I really didn't see myself going to school and getting a degree because, being kind of in the business, family business, it just
Hmm.
showed, like it gives you a little bit of a, like I always saw myself in that because I was always in it already, even if I
Right.
was 5 years old and I sat in the storage room waiting for my parents to get off work or, just seeing them work hard and the success, I think if school was just like, a no brainer. Like I knew I didn't want it to go. And my dad and my mom were huge, being from Asian families, they push. But I did go,
Hmm.
to community college and I showed them that, this isn't for me. Trying to, show them that and being able to show them still now that school isn't for everyone and, everyone's success is different, even if it's school or just taking that leap of faith and just following your heart basically and knowing that who you are, your core, and if it's business, if it's anything else, just follow it. And I believe that being in business, small, big, or whatever, the outcome is just, to me, it's well worth it just because it's something you've done, not someone, what I
Yep.
mean?
Yeah, yeah, it's very fulfilling, right? Because it's coming from your brain, your hands, your heart. Like it's all on you, which is challenging but also very, very fulfilling.
Yes.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, and I think that's good advice for those who might be struggling with that question of, do I go to school? Do I pursue my idea? It sounds like you tried it and, went try to go down the route of school and said, "Hey, like look, this really isn't for me. Let me pursue my dream. Let me pursue my success my way." And also on the kind of the flip side too, school will technically always be there, right? So if someone tries out their idea and it's not going well and they actually decide, oh, wait, I do want to go back to school, like you can, right? It's, you don't have an age limit on school, which is nice as well. So I appreciate you encouraging others to pursue their idea if they have it in them, right? If that's the path they really want to go down, try it, go for it, see where it leads.
Right. Because I mean, you never know. Sometimes it might not be the best choice, but you still learn from it. I
Hmm.
think taking those chances will make you stronger, even if the outcome is not what you thought it would be. Because some people go to school and love it, and some people don't like me, or some people go into business and love it, and then some people realize this kind of lifestyle isn't for me. Maybe the nine to
Yeah.
five does work, and I think that's like a learning experience for just who you are too. Because life is all it's always crazy, but it's
Hmm.
always finding like your type of crazy kind of.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, find the crazy that you can deal with and thrive in.
Yes.
I like that. I like that a lot. And Josh, on your end, how was that decision for you kind of jumping in, kind of going, I'm not going to right now pursue what I was planning on pursuing, and go and open a donut shop. How was that decision? Any advice there on from your perspective on how you made that decision?
Yeah, that was it was an interesting time because Jennifer and I had probably been together for a year, maybe two. It was like we said, it was really a leap of faith. She wanted to follow her dream. I had my own dreams that I wanted to follow, but hers inspired me, I would say.
Mm.
Whereas mine, I kind of thought of not necessarily putting it on the back burner, but hers just, like I said, being able to help her do that just kind of inspired me really. It made me feel like it would be more rewarding, more fulfilling, being able to build something, create something on my own. It kind of helped that I had already known her family business. I
Hmm.
actually started bussing tables at her aunt's restaurant when I was like 15 and a half, 16 years old. Um, so I was unknowingly in her family business, for 5 or 6 years before we even met.
Yeah,
Um,
wow.
so I saw what it could be as we started talking about the potential to do it. And it was something that I knew I could come back to. I could still pursue my dreams later. And in hindsight, it's been 100% worth it because, owning a small business is kind of that small business America is what I call it, is something that I would never want to take out of me now. It's just like I said, there's no other word for it other than her inspiring me.
Your guys' story is quite unique because I don't think I've had a guest on where the family has been in kind of the small business world and specifically to donuts, which is what you guys pursued. You were almost able to test it out, right? Like almost do like a free trial where you both were involved in the business in different ways before you took the leap of faith and took it on yourself, which I think is interesting. And I wonder if others who are considering opening up a business can do that in their own way, whether it's like working at a local business in town, like helping out, trying to see the behind the scenes, almost that, like free trial, like testing it out. I think that's an interesting and smart way to approach it.
Yeah, with hers, so the story gets, I guess you could say, a little more interesting or a little more
Mm-hmm.
unique. So her family, like I said previously, like I worked at her family. It was an Asian restaurant, so they actually
Oh,
used to
okay.
do, yeah, they actually used to do like Chinese restaurants, buffets, seafood, those type of things. Her family actually learned how to do donuts and kind of transitioned away from their other Chinese restaurants into donuts. So it was definitely, we got to experience the small business lifestyle before starting our own, which is something that I've talked to our employees about. There's obviously some obvious differences, obviously obvious. There are there are some obvious differences to on the customer side of things to small business versus big business, big box stores, that kind of thing. But behind the scenes, there's just a lot that you can learn from working in a small business about, the approach to everything from, your day-to-day work ethic, your communication, and your relationship with your quote unquote bosses, owners, and your regular team members. It's just there's a lot that you can pick up that even if you don't go into small business, when I worked in just a standard corporate sales job, there were a lot of things that I took from my small business experience and helped me excel in the corporate world.
Yeah, that's a good point too, because taking almost the small business, even I want to say like ethics and the way they treat people and do work, and to your point, applying that to a corporate environment, and even vice versa, like if you were coming from corporate, bringing some of those processes and frameworks into the small business world. Yeah, I like that thought. I'm kind of forming that picture in my head of how corporate and small business can kind of, I don't know, lean on each other or help each other, right? There's like definitely overlaps there.
Yeah. Yeah. I always say that, and I used to talk to my manager about this when I was working at my corporate job, and he agreed 100%. He always told me that one of the reasons why I was one of his best reps was because, how much I cared. And I
Yeah.
feel like sometimes it's very easy, not just in corporate world, but in a small business. It's in your day-to-day life, everybody has so much to deal with and so much on their minds that it's easy to do things without caring. And that's what we tell our employees to, actively just care from moment to moment. Just care about what you're doing. Because when you go into a big box store or a small business, it's easy to tell the difference. Or if you're just working with somebody in a corporate job, it's easy to tell the difference between a person who cares about what they're doing and someone who doesn't.
Having empathy, right, in everything you do, and yeah, applying that to really all aspects of life. I want to dive into the donuts themselves, and we certainly do not have to go through every flavor that you guys create and sell, but just curious, for those listening, what makes your donuts unique, or what are your favorite flavors or the most popular flavors? Just give us a little taste of some of the donuts.
I've always had a really bad sweet tooth, so I'll go ahead and dive into this one. My two favorites are our sour cream old fashioned and our apple fritter. They're kind of on two separate spectrums. One of them's kind of classed as a cake donut, which are kind of the denser donuts that have a soft center but a crispy outside. And then our apple fritter is one of our yeast donuts. So yeast raised donuts are the larger, fluffy ones. We have those in a really wide range of flavors and toppings. But the apple fritter in particular is a kind of cinnamon and apple diced up and chopped up together, all into a mix up of a donut. It's got a little crispy, it's got a little fluffy, but it's the way that the actual apple chunks, applesauce, and the cinnamon all mixed together is just delicious to me. And it is one of our most popular donuts in general. Yeah, my wife loves any of the chocolate ones. So that's her go-to, is just a chocolate iced or a chocolate iced with chocolate chips or a chocolate filled. We have almost too much variety sometimes. I call it option overload, which can be for someone coming in for the first time. Our menu can be a little confusing just because we have so many options.
Sure.
Which I feel bad about sometimes, because it's like we wanted as many options just to give people anything that they could possibly want. So it's good and bad, but hopefully as people come in multiple times or get used to the menu, it gets easier to know exactly all of them. So
yeah. Or even honing down right on your end, like, okay, these are the most popular ones or these aren't, kind of experimenting there. How do you come up with what types of donuts to sell? I don't know. I'm always curious when people run their own business, like, how do you become the donut expert, right? Like, how do you create flavors? How do you know what ones you want to make? Was that just from, some of the family history, or did you dive into donut books? Like, what are some of the resources there? How did you, become that donut expert?
So some of it is from family history. Some of it is just from eating donuts all my life. Like I said, I'm the one with a big sweet tooth. I was always a Krispy Kreme kid growing up, and until I discovered these type of donuts. I mean, I still have Krispy Kreme on occasion, but it's hard to go to Krispy Kreme when I can have a hot donut anytime I want.
Yeah.
So yeah, really the base menu, we kind of made all those decisions kind of pulling from different donuts we had seen over the years, or different donuts that were already offered at our old shop or our family shops. And then we just kind of I have an active list that I keep in my head that I try different times here and there, and just to kind of test out, because once we kind of settle in and really know our business flow, we'll bring out some featured donuts and kind of limited time donuts occasionally, or maybe for different national days. Like there's one that I want to do for National Cinnamon Day that I plan on doing, is a filled donut that's cinnamon sugar, like our cinnamon sugar yeast raised donut, but the filled version with a buttercream center. I tried making it for the first time about a week ago, and it was amazing to me. Hopefully, it would be amazing to other people as well. But just those kind of things. If I go to a cake shop and I have an interesting slice of cake, I think, oh, would this make for an interesting and good donut?
Yeah.
The ideas come from a lot of different places.
Right. Just getting inspiration. Yeah, that, I don't know why I wouldn't have thought of like getting inspiration from other foods, but that makes sense. Kind of a silly question, but how many donuts do you guys eat a week? Like, are you just having one a day because they're right there? Are you sick of them and have a donut like once a month? Like, how hard is it to resist or not resist the access to the donuts?
So, Jennifer is much better at stopping herself than I am. I probably have one or two a day, depending on the day.
Yeah.
And depending on what kinds. There's a certain level of quality control where we need to make sure that things are coming out right, and then there's sometimes where they're coming out so good you just have to have one. So yeah, it's a mix. Jennifer, what do you think? You probably have one every few days.
One every few days. I mean, I think
Nice.
Josh can be the donut taster. I just kind of, it's like one of those things where you cook it. It's like dinner, or lunch. When you cook it, by the time it's done, you don't want to eat it.
Yeah.
You're making it.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to that. Yeah, I was just curious because I was like, I don't know how how I would be if I owned and ran a donut shop. Like, would I eat one every day, or would I don't know, get sick of it? I don't know. I'd probably go through phases.
Yeah, I mean, I go through phases. It's like people come in a shop and like, oh my God, it smells so sweet. But I'm
Hmm.
there all the time. So it's like, I don't even smell the sweetness anymore. I just,
Yeah.
I'm just there. Yeah.
That's awesome. I'm curious if you guys have any advice of, for others who work with their partner, a family member, even a friend, like how has that been? Any top pieces of advice that come to mind, and would love to hear from both of you on that, of just working with someone who you're really, really close to and know really, really well, and they're your business partner. You're working with them every day.
So it's interesting because whenever Josh and I started our first one, we weren't engaged. We weren't anything like
Mm.
that. We were just dating. And so we moved down there, and Mississippi is something else. But and we were in a small town, and the building that we signed up, like renovated, kind of was like a rundown house. So like Mississippi is really hot and all that. So it's like it's very testing because one, we're in a new area, we're in very small space, and that's our first one. So I mean, like there are days where I just hated everything about it because
Hmm.
doing a donut or just any type of bakery, it's all temperature control and everything's very precise. And like there
Mm.
are days where Josh and I go in and the AC isn't working and I'm just not having a good day, but it's like he is like the calmer one, obviously, and just is able to control and just be as calm as can be. Everything can be going bad, but he still has like this positive mindset. We will get through it, and all of that, all the positive, just being very level headed at all times. So what my advice is always just like balance, I guess, and
Hmm.
just like hearing each other, communicating, and just like if I had a lot of bad days versus him, but being able to tell each other, talking things through and making sure like we'll get through it. It's fine, even though things aren't fine, but that's what keeps everything going. It's not easy because
Yeah,
you
it's
can't separate that, right? You're in a
Hmm.
relationship, but you're in a different relationship, a business relationship where we're together at all times.
it really amplifies the stress, I would say, being in a business relationship and a an emotional a life relationship.
Hmm.
That was one of those things that we kind of got to do a test run before we went into business. Though we served tables at her aunt's restaurant, we were the main bartenders at her aunt's restaurant, so we had always been a team. We knew we could do it well together. We just knew that it would be 2-3 times as hard, 2-3 times as stressful when it's your own
Right.
business. But like she said, just being able to find balance in your business relationship and in your personal relationship, and always, like she said, communicating. You can't let one of those lives bleed into each other too much.
Hmm.
They will. You can't stop that, but not letting it happen too much and communicating about both sides of the coin, really.
I really love how throughout your guys' journey you were able to like test those things out, right? Like see what running a business is like, see what working together is like. And it was almost you were taking kind of little steps towards eventually running a business together. I just think that's really smart, whether that was intentional or not. I just think that's in reflection, kind of great advice for others who are maybe nervous to just go full on into running their own business. It's like find ways to try to test it out and see how you feel in those moments, in those types of responsibilities.
Because at the end of the day, we're not just business partner. Like the main focus is our relationship, right? It's like we are boyfriend, girlfriends, husband, wives at this point, and I think that's important first. In
Right.
order to be successful in anything you do, especially when it's like a business like this, you all like we have to have a healthy relationship first, and then it translates to having a successful business because that's how it those two things kind of correlate, or it's like a success thing. Like it's not easy, but I think it just shows like that the relationship is strong, and if it's business or our personal relationship.
Yeah, and that's not to say that
We're perfect. No.
that's not to say that we're perfect, or that's not to say that someone couldn't, because it's I'm sure
different for
I
everyone.
know people. I know one couple who thought about starting a small business together, and they decided that they didn't want to
Sure.
because they wanted to keep their work lives separate. So it's not necessarily for everyone. It can work very well. I'm sure it can work average, and I'm sure it can work very poorly. A decision that you have to make on your own personal level.
Yeah.
Because just because you all don't work as business partners doesn't mean you won't work as life
Hmm.
partners.
Those are great points. And it sounds like just knowing your priorities and your personal priorities and then your priorities as a couple, as a partnership of it sounds like for you, your personal relationship like does come first and you have that awareness that keeping that healthy keeps the business relationship healthy and sounds like you guys are very aligned on that. So being aligned, communicating, right? What are the priorities is probably the first step to working together really well. Do you guys find it difficult to put down the business? Is it ingrained, 24/7 in your life and that's okay? That's what you prefer. Like how difficult or easy was it to find that kind of work-life balance, if you will? Although I hate that word balance. It's really hard to find that perfect balance.
I have a hard time disconnecting from work in general, and that's the small business. That's when I worked at the corporate job. It's easier for Jennifer to disconnect because she knows she needs to. Me, my mind just kind of keeps going even if I don't want it to. But she also helps me disconnect, and I try to do a better job of disconnecting. But when I think of work-life balance, it's difficult because there will never be balance as much as you want there to be. You just have to realize when things are too imbalanced and pull yourself back or have someone else who can communicate that with you and help you do that. Because to a point, especially in a small business when you're the owner, you don't have a choice to seek the balance that you need. Sometimes the business has to take the forefront just because you have to get it open, you have to keep it running, there are certain things that you have to do. But I'm sure that can be said in other jobs as well.
No, I think that makes sense. Like knowing to your point, yeah, it's not always going to be the perfect like 50-50 balance, right? Sometimes business will be 80-90%. Sometimes personal life will be 80-90%, and just going with that flow and recognizing that that's going to happen. That's part of the balance.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I mean, I always tell Josh, because his mind always is going, is that,
Hmm.
yeah, like the business that we're in, we can't just say, hey, let's step back and let the employees do it all. Josh is the baker, and I do all the other little things that, I'll fry, I'll dip, and all that. So it's like we're always going to be there. We're never going to be able to step back and just let someone else take the lead on the baking because, it's like one of those things when you have so, and I've learned this in the Chinese restaurant business, when you have so many chefs or bakers in our case now, it's like the recipes don't stay consistent. And even if you write down a scoop of this, a scoop of this, half scoop, all of that, it's never the same because no one's going to care about your business as much as you. And that's important because I told him, it's like we have to also like understand we are like we have to step outside of the business mindset sometime because we are parents. And in order for us to be good parents is to be able to disconnect that, be able to disconnect from the business when we're at home and and spending time with our son Austin. Because the first business we didn't have but two dogs, and we run the whole shop. We ran the whole shop all by ourselves. But now, when you add a child, it's like everything's different now. You got school, you have to be a parent. Things are so different nowadays. And I always tell Josh, you have to remind him, you are a dad, I'm a mom at the end of the day. So if we can disconnect, it makes our relationship or our time with Austin more, intentional versus like our heads at the business and.
Hmm. It's recognizing almost like what role you're in each moment, right? Because we all play so many different roles, and it's okay. Like in this moment, almost like what hat am I wearing? What role am I in versus the next hour, or right? Like this evening.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's a great perspective, and kind of along that same train. Where are you guys hoping to take Heritage Donuts? Do you have any goals or future milestones that you want to share on the podcast? Any big dreams, or maybe some of them, you want to keep them private, and that's okay too.
So Specific for Heritage Donuts, we love the mom and pop shop style business. Me in particular, I think there's a certain atmosphere and connection to be made when the owner's there, when they're present, when
Hmm.
they can make that connection with their customers and their employees. And it's still, that connection can still be there if you expand beyond one shop, but that's not really on our mind at the moment. Really, for I would say our goal, our kind of objective with this shop is to be that donut shop where parents can bring their kids and say, "Hey, I went to this donut shop when I was a kid, or when I
Mm.
was a teenager." We just want to become, that community donut shop, that's kind of spot where you can just go and enjoy a sweet treat and have a positive, fun environment. Because I had a place like that when I was younger, a place in Greensboro called Yum Yums that was just a nice, fun little hot dog and ice cream store that's been there for now like 30 years maybe. And it's just it's just one of those places where you go and you just feel good. So we're just focused on creating that environment for our customers, and kind of maintaining it long term. We do have some other business goals, business ventures that we talk about all the time, that we've honestly talked about before we talked about donut shops. We've considered opening everything from a juice bar to a specialty liquor bar. Me in particular, I used to love. We both loved bartending, but I've always been a big specialty liquor fan. So
Yeah.
that's another business that we've considered opening. But I think our kind of business goals are, I guess, more. We have additional business goals that are separate from Heritage Donuts rather than Heritage Donuts specific business goals, I'd say.
Right. That's neat. It sounds like you guys are just gonna keep pursuing, your dreams, your ideas, whether that's sticking with Heritage Donuts and just continuing to build that or going into a different idea, but just keeping true to that entrepreneurial spirit, which is excellent. That's inspiring. That's awesome. And why did you guys pick the Wake Forest location? Was it just because it's where you were located? Did you move here specifically because you thought it was a good idea for a donut shop? Did it just kind of come to be that way?
We moved here like 3 years ago,
Okay.
a little over 3 years ago. One of our friends lived here, and he always talked very highly of the Wake Forest area, and how great of a place it is to raise his family. So we moved here. I got that corporate job that I
Mm-hmm.
mentioned, but we always knew in the back of our mind that we could open a business. So really, we just kind of I worked at my job, and Jennifer was raising our son, and we knew that one day we may see a location open up that says for rent, and we might think that's a perfect spot for a donut shop, and that's what happened. It came open about a little over 2 years ago, and we hopped on it and started talking to the landlord, and we just knew it would be a great area, and it's close to where we lived, so we went for it.
And one more thing is why I chose to go back into business is because like I was a stay-at-home mom, which I was trying to
Mm-hmm.
find something to do with he at that time he was 18 months old, keeping him out the house and just not driving me crazy. And I would just go into the area shopping, I love Harris Teeter, so I always went to Harris Teeter. Gosh, I knew like being he was the only one working at the time, and when driving around, just felt like Wake Forest needed this like a donut shop, not Krispy Kreme, like a mom and pop.
Yeah.
And I one day I was jokingly saying this because I was like, Josh, if I can find a building that's vacant in that strip that we're in, you're gonna have to quit your corporate job because it's like for me, every time I went into that area, I felt it. Like, and that's how I always
Yeah.
go with, like, even with the first donut shop. I went to visit my dad. I felt that location was great and it was successful. And I'm always one of those that kind of go off vibes and just the feeling of things. And I just saw that my husband always gave 120%, like, always trying to make sure like his job was, I was overperforming. And at the time, his corporate job was just being weird and just not showing that type of respect for him. Cause I saw that he works too hard for for a company that, they don't even see him. They only see numbers. And to me, if you put that type of energy, that type of like, I guess, hustle in your own business, the outcome is much bigger. And I knew that, and just his work ethic is just too, I think it's too good to pass on to be like your own, put that in your own business, because if you did that, there's no way you wouldn't be successful. And that's the biggest like push for me was, honestly, the donut shop is a hard business to be in, because we're in there at 11 midnight going and baking all day. Sometimes we're there till 4, depending on our staff. And it just seemed like, why is Josh putting all this effort in a business or someone's business when he could do the same? And, we could potentially plan our retirement versus someone else planning it for us.
Yeah.
And that just gave me like that, that just made it clear to me that it was time for us to go back in business.
Yeah, it sounds like you guys, redirected your energy to like the energy that you both already had into your own business. And like you were saying, Jennifer, just it's so much more fulfilling, right? Doing it yourself and having full control over it, really.
Yes.
It's very inspiring. And yeah, thank you both for sharing your story here today. And the last question I ask all my guests and would love to hear from both of you is just in this moment, what is your proudest accomplishment? It can be related to the business or it can be on a completely different topic we didn't even touch upon. But just in this moment, kind of first thing that comes to mind, what's your proudest accomplishment so far?
For me, potentially both of us. I wouldn't want to speak for her. She can answer as well. But I mean, my biggest accomplishment definitely would be that first donut shop. We moved halfway across the country to somewhere we had never been to, surrounded by only one family member, my wife's father. As just a couple 24-year-olds, we built a donut shop and a business from the ground up and made it successful all on our own. So her dad, helped us for maybe the first month before he went and opened one himself. But yeah, that would definitely be, my proudest accomplishment.
I think for me, it's almost the same, but also just, showing, because obviously we hit on like why I didn't go to college, being able to show my parents that I didn't need the degree or anything to kind of become successful, just, like being successful and showing them that it was okay not to do what they wanted and choosing what I wanted versus them, Also, obviously being 24 and being able to open our business was huge for me too, because it felt great, like like I always tell Josh, everybody has a different success age, your people's success comes at different time, and ours was kind of early. And I think that felt great to be kind of young and, just being able to do what we do and kind of love it and just being successful.
Congratulations to you both for everything you've accomplished so far and will in the future. And again, thank you so much for just sharing your story and advice to others on the show. And before we officially sign off, where can people find you and Heritage Donuts, specifically where you're located? And then, of course, shout out any social medias.
Yeah, so we are at 1040 Forestville Road, Suite 132 in Wake Forest, North Carolina. It is the public shopping center for people familiar with the area. They can find us on social media at facebook.com/Heritage Donuts and on Instagram at Heritage Donuts. We don't have any official website, but they can find us on those too.
Beautiful. Well, I hope everyone checks out you guys and Heritage Donuts. And again, thank you so much for being on Virtual Coffee.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for having us. Have a good one.